All right, sounds exciting. Let me pull this a bit closer.
Let's do this. Let's do this. Here we go. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on LNC Talks. As many of you know, my name is Tim Kane. I'm the CEO and founder of Medical Legal Connection, and we are a service that provides many medical legal services for law firms in New York State and all around the country. One of my partners is with me today. It's Nicole Wadzina. She's a provider of care and a nurse practitioner at Mercy Hospital. And we have a very important, esteemed guest, one of my first clients from Nicotra Law. We have Rick Nicotra, who is a partner and owns his own firm in Buffalo, New York here. And he mainly handles personal injury cases. And we're glad to see him. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Tim. How are you? Great to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you. It's one of our better days in Buffalo here today. We're about 45 degrees. And I already see on Facebook, though, I subscribe to one of the police scanners, and the Skyway has closed down right now for an accident. So I thought with the weather improving that the drivers out there would be driving better, but apparently not today. And anyway,
but it should be getting better very soon, though.
I say about 6 weeks, and I think we'll be in a better position, than this ice and snow.
I think the Farmer's Almanac actually said that it was going to be an early spring. So let's hope that's true.
So, Nikki, tell us just before
what did the groundhog
ask your questions. I'm sorry, Rick, go ahead. Let's interrupt each other. This is very casual.
What did the groundhog say this year?
The who?
What did the groundhog say? I don't even know what.
I think it was 6 weeks. But how accurate is the groundhog, especially around here? So anyway,
as long as they keep predicting 6 more weeks of winter, they're probably correct.
Yeah, that's the safest bet.
6 weeks.
Better than the Bills winning the Super Bowl bet-wise. Yes.
Oh, you want to bring that up?
I know. I have to throw that out there. We're broken-hearted Western New York right now.
Yeah. Still.
So, Nikki, tell us a little bit about you in the beginning, and then we're going to ask Rick some questions.
Sure. Well, I'm a nurse practitioner here locally in Buffalo. I specialize in neurocritical care, which I've been working as an NP for over the past 10 years. And prior to that, I was working as an RN in the ICU and the neuro ICU. So I do a lot with stroke, aneurysm ruptures, TBI. I also work in a Trauma One center that's more upstate New York. I do that also in the same kind of role as neurocritical care. And, I've also have a little long-term experience, subacute experience, because I did that prior to going to the ICU.
And you've attended a bunch of independent medical exams for me. How do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I have. And I enjoy it. It's very interesting. I'm able to I've actually been learning a little bit too as I do it. I use my nursing skills, but some of the testing and everything, I'm learning some stuff at the same time. So it's great.
Perfect. So, Rick, tell us about Nicotra Law. And if I'm injured in an accident or I just got injured some way, I think a lot of people get injured and they don't realize that they could get the benefits of an attorney. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so sometimes it's surprising your people don't know that when you hire us, you don't pay us anything up front. My firm will front all the expenses. So you're allowed to get professional help and have somebody assist you without there being any threat of any expense to you or your family. And I think that as more people realize that, they could access, kind of help easier, get somebody who focuses in this area of law exclusively for free, essentially. And then we hope that they're not hurt. But if they're seriously hurt, then there's only an attorney fee at the end of the case once we're able to kind of secure either an award, a settlement, a verdict, things like that. So people often don't realize you can get somebody on board right away without having to pay anything up front.
So that's wonderful. So a lot of people don't realize that it's really a no loss for them to at least pick up the phone and call Rick Nicotra's office.
Yeah, and what people also don't realize is sometimes they try to handle it themselves. Oftentimes what we see is a lot of early mistakes made in the claims processes, and there's no benefit to handling it yourself. We don't cost you a penny. And in fact, the industry council themselves a few years ago did a study regarding results with or without a lawyer. And they actually confirmed through their study that people that do hire a law firm get on average 3.5 times more than if they had resolved it themselves. That's in their pocket. So the results are really staggering without extra cost. There's no benefit to hiring it by yourself, especially when it's not your area of focus. There's a lot of deadlines people don't realize. There are some notice requirements they don't realize. And there's a lot of benefits they don't realize that we process for them right from the get-go under that no-fault benefit package.
So if without a lawyer, they could without knowingly shortchange themselves, and I think that's the message.
They really do, and there's no reason to handle it yourself. There's no benefit from an administrative standpoint. People, should really understand that they've paid for these policies sometimes for decades and decades without making any kind of an injury claim, and then once you need to, there are a lot of benefits that come into play if they're noticed on time that they should be getting, that they really often don't know that are even there for them.
One thing Nikki and I have noticed, especially myself, sitting in the waiting rooms and with some of your clients, that, well, this is more predominant with the younger people. They don't have a primary physician. They didn't have any knowledge of where to call for any medical help. And officers like yourself help them with that because they don't know how to how to drive down that road. Where do I get a doctor? What's the best way, for someone to handle my treatment?
Yeah, we often provide lists of providers in their neighborhood or within 5 or 10 miles who accept no fault insurance as payment in full. Some providers don't accept no fault insurance.
Right.
So one of the questions people often ask is, well, where do I go? What do I do? I don't have a primary care. Some do have a primary care, which can help with referrals for other services like physical therapy, or if they want a specialty referral somewhere like to pain management, their doctors can often give them a list of providers that way as well. But we do this so much that we already know, we can give them, a list of 10 names who we know treat in this area, who accept no fault insurance. We recommend they often go online, look for Google reviews, things like that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's I find a lot of people they find no fault to be frustrating when dealing with it on their own, and that's that's the main purpose.
And a lot of providers find it frustrating. So that's why you could have an amazing primary care group and they simply don't accept no fault insurance. It's not because they can't. It's because the no fault billing process has so many hoops or complications. A no-fault adjuster can be really difficult and ask for more information when it's not needed. They can do an additional verification. Sometimes they'll pepper providers with, give me a proof of your articles of incorporation and your medical licensing, when it could be a major group who's been, in our neighborhood for decades, licensed, insured. They've been paying them on 100 other claims, but they just really make them jump through hoops to get paid on purpose. So some smaller offices and some primary care groups and some massage therapies, for example, they won't even deal with no fault. It's just not worth it to them to have somebody in the loop regarding billing questions or billing complications or follow-ups. It becomes frustrating for them, which is a shame because, as you know, the no fault reimbursement rates are typically among the best compared to other insurance carriers.
Oh, wow. No. Yeah. No, I think I did hear that from somewhere that the no fault reimbursement is pretty good. Interesting. a lot of, if you can answer this, and I don't know the answer to this, it depends on every case, but people will say, or I'll hear, and I don't have the answer to this question. How long is the average, if I call a lawyer and I'm hurt, am I not going to hear anything for 5 years, 8 years, 3 years? I don't know if you have a.
Well, I can tell you that's one of the most common complaints in our industry. Drew and I met with a client about an hour ago that was really seriously hurt. Young guy, no prior problems to speak of, has a really large disc herniation compressing some nerve roots with some cord contact. He's having some dysfunction with his nerves, the pain, tingling, numbness. And his question was, how long will this take? And my real answer is a lot of our cases resolve within 6 months, 9 months, a year, if treatment is limited. If we have a simple broken arm, for example, it's cast for 4 to 6 weeks. If they heal without any permanency or issues and there's no physical therapy needed, the ortho will see him, give him a clean bill of health, but then that case really is ready to talk about. If you have a disc herniation with impingement and you've tried chiropractic care, PT, massage therapy, you escalate that treatment to maybe a PMR or a pain management doctor, you have injections, it still doesn't fix it. The MRI comes back showing that compression. An orthopedic surgeon or a neurosurgeon can offer them some options. And there are some minimally invasive options. There are probably 4 or 5 different levels of spine surgeries offered with differing levels of invasiveness. So he's still traveling down the road of treatment. He's in that second phase of treatment right now, but trying to get some answers to fix the problem. But in his case, if we had resolved his case 6 or 9 or 12 months after it happened, he would have been getting shortchanged because his really significant medical treatment is ahead of him. And we try to focus on getting people the best we can. As you know, Tim, we can't fix people. You're in that business. We're not. We try to get them the most recovery we can for the injury sustained, and that includes a lot of things. There's a list of things that we try to get on that recovery list, and it goes, pain and suffering is the most common one people know of. But there's also economic loss, out of pockets, co-pays. If you miss time from work and no fault didn't reimburse you the full rate, which they don't, what did I lose? If they're on workers' comp and they're hurt, they're losing a third of their pay out the gate if they're getting the max pay from workers' comp. So when people say how long does it take, I hate to give the lawyer answer, it depends, but right. I say it depends. I give them a few examples of how their case might last 5 or 6 months. And that's really what they want. Nobody wants to have a case that lasts, 2 years or 3 years, because what that means is you're probably really hurting. You've gone through hell for treatment. You've gone through many phases of treatment. And you're at that window where you're 12 to 18 months post-traumatic event or post-surgery, where the doctor can now give you under the AMA guidelines a permanency rating. So there are a lot of things that people don't want to have happen to them. But in general, our bigger cases tend to last longer because the damages are so severe.
Right. So you just answered probably the question that I tell people I don't know, but if they talk to me, that's what they'll always say is, why is this going so long? I'm like, that can be so many factors. You'll have to ask your attorney, but because I see some people that in an independent medical exam, the incident happened 2 to 3 years ago, and sometimes it's just 6 months ago. I mean, so it just varies. So that was an excellent answer for the public if they're curious to the length of the process that this litigation or legal aspect takes. What do you think? We're a couple of legal nurses. How do you? I know we provide a great benefit to you, but why don't you just, if you could elaborate on what's the benefits of having us at your client's independent medical exams?
Well, and I was talking with a lawyer last night who says, I go with my clients to the exam. And I said, Jim, if you do that, you know that you're putting yourself in a position as what they call lawyer as witness. And that's a category under the ethics rules that says that if the lawyer, for some reason, is a witness to any aspect, whether it be liability or damages, then they're disqualified or can be disqualified potentially. from representation, because you won't be able then to take the stand and say, well, I was at that exam. It only lasted, 7.5 minutes. They only asked these 11 questions, but they gave a report where they appeared that they answered 15 questions. So as you're aware, the insurance defense bar typically will select from a very small number of physicians to do these defense medical exams. Now, they call them IMEs, or independent medical examinations, but they're really anything but. They are true defense medical exams. They're not hired by us. They're hired by the defense firms to defend a case and decrease the value. And we have people that have no prior problems, and then the DME doctor will say, well, it's all degenerative. Or they'll say the ranges of motion are full. And so what we do is we task you guys to really help us be the mind, be the reasonable mind out there, be the voice of reason, be the objective observer. And so really what happens then is we're allowed to give you a call, send you an email and say, we have a DME coming up with Dr. So-and-so for this client at this date and this time. And then you guys provide a couple things, a short meeting beforehand as to what to expect, just to be honest, to be direct, not to offer any information. This is a medical exam, not a second deposition. And then you go in there with them and say, hey, listen, I'm going to observe this objectively. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to write down what's going on, what tests really were done, what the actual results were. Because if somebody bends over and does a straight leg raise and they're grimacing or they're grunting in pain, that doctor will mark it as a negative exam because the person didn't say yes or verbalize a word. When in fact, that same doctor, if they had their own patient in their office and they saw when the pain response was, they would mark that test as a positive at that range of motion measurement because it was their own patient. But when they're doing a defense medical exam, if they want more and more and more of this business, we feel that they had better write a report that might be helpful or conducive to the defense. And we get to attack or address those misconceptions or those characterizations of our client that might not ring true to what their true presentation was. And they call that cross-examination, basically. But you guys prepare us for that by giving us a written report as to what time it started, how the client presented, how long the physical examination was, what questions were asked by the doctor for the background, and the history portion, why that's important. Maybe you could talk about that for us, why that question and answer period before that brief physical exam is so important that you guys are present for.
I not often, because I'm seeing these same doctors over and over again, and they know what I'm going to say. I would often intervene if the question on the mechanism of injury would get a little off the scope of the mechanism. And in fact, I would direct them to the deposition, or I'd say, Dr. Such and such, Mrs. Smith has an attorney that really just wants this line of question to be directly to the mechanism of injury. And this is, beyond that, can we get to the next medical question? Or can you refer to the deposition for the details of how it occurred in the incident? They give me an eye raise, this and that, but now almost all, I'm not going to say any names. There's two of them that when they see me in the room, they'll pull the deposition out and they'll just go to that because they know exactly that's what I'm going to say. So, I mean, I think that's, that's such a vital part because I've seen some IMEs where I'm not directed to intervene on the mechanism of injury, and clients love to offer everything and put to the kitchen sink. My kids were in the car screaming at me, and my phone rang, and I got hit by by somebody else as I was trying to get to work, and I was late. I'm like, oh my God, So that's just one of the main points that I like to say.
I think sometimes helping them not be their own worst enemy is one of your hardest jobs, but also most important jobs. Is you're not here to tell your story. This is not time to share your story. This is time to appear for a very brief defense physical medical exam and answer the questions honestly, prepare, and also participate honestly. Mm-hmm. If they ask you to bend over and see how far you can reach, give an honest, valid response, because they will know based upon your muscle tension if you're not truly at your limit. They're going to say that you're not giving a full and fair participation in the examination. And so you're there to help them reinforce the fact that the right response is the honest response. Because they do some testing, right, that are like malingering tests. Can you tell us a little bit about what a malingering test is and why clients have to be careful of giving an honest response?
See it all the time. I call them Waddell's. They're Waddell's theory of malingering. You referred to the straight leg raises. What'll often happen here is the client will be seated on the exam table, and the doc will just grab the leg and just kind of raise and say, "How does it feel when I do this?" And they're like, "Oh, or it hurts. My back hurts." And then they'll go into something for 10 to 15, 10 minutes will go by. They'll lay them flat on their back on the exam table. Then they'll do another straight leg raise. And sometimes that seated straight leg raise, there was no pain or there was pain. If there's a clinical spinal injury, they both should hurt when that leg is raised up. And that's what they're looking for. I know if they're both if they're contrasts of each other, I know that's going to be a problem, and that's the main malingering test I see.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, they call that Waddell's theory of malingering, and there's like 5 of them. They'll touch they'll palpate the spine, and some people like scream, yell when it's like they're just tapping just like that. They'll call that malingering. Yeah.
And they also do some moves or some testing that should not provoke a pain response, even people that are hurt. And so oftentimes they'll wait and see if the person pronounces that they're in pain, even when even somebody with a serious injury, should be producing pain with that particular move, right?
When I get a chance, a lot of times in the pre-waiting room little conference with patients, I'll say, if something hurts, say it hurts, and if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't hurt, because just for that reason. Because if he does something and it doesn't hurt, and you say it does, well, then that they're going to go down that road. This is a defense doc, but I like that he does this before he starts his IMEs. Is he'll say, please put forth your fullest effort, because he'll give an example. He'll say it's a shoulder. If you were just if I ask you to extend out your arm and you only go this far, but I pull your medical records out and you were in the doctor's office 2 weeks ago and he got a full range out of you, I'm going to say that's a red flag. I appreciate that he tells people that, right before.
I do too, because I think if he wants a fair result or wants to appear like he wants a fair result, then he kind of lets the patient know ahead of time, listen, I did review your records. I know what the range of motion should be as of last week. I'm not here to, not write it down right, but you have to participate.
Exactly.
But
that, right, and I feel like a lot of the clients are always like so nervous,
Clients are nervous. Yeah.
Probably a rare exception.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Because a lot of those guys are really trying, I think, to produce a report that might be favorable for whoever hired them.
And I have a couple of them. If you ever call me, I know who I have suspects for that. Like during the range of motion, they'll be across the side of the room and they'll just have their little goniometer like 6 feet away. Like he's almost doing it for my, because he's to appease me and just like that. And like, no, it's like, whatever, I mean, not the proper use. And it's just, and I always note that, but I just don't think much of them for it.
Well, and sometimes really even the client's like, well, that's it. And I'm like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, because so many have been suffering for so many years and they see this as this monumentous event, right? This is the defense preparing to defend their case medically. And when they go there, they're often disappointed that the physical exam could be 8, 10, 15 minutes. And like, well, wait a minute, this is my whole life is involved here. This is something that I've been suffering through. Don't you want to learn more? Or and I think they're surprised that it really is often a very brief exam. And it mostly is a 20, 25, 30 page medical review, trying to pick apart inconsistencies or things that they might think are inconsistent. Even though when you look at the whole picture, they're really wholly consistent with good days, bad days, trying to just survive and get through it.
And a lot of times the IME is the doc seeing this person when this incident happened years ago. I mean, what's going on that day wasn't necessarily how they were feeling, 2 months after the accident.
Well, and maybe what that person was doing. I mean, if they're even trying to walk around the block or garden a little bit, they might suffer for 3 days in a row. If they go to that defense medical examination and they've been on bed rest or not working, they took their half of a pain pill in the morning that they're supposed to, they took the anti-inflammatory, then they go in for these range of motion tests. That's not a true answer as to what that person is dealing with at a permanency rating, because the only way to really tell that is how they appear if they're unmedicated,
Right.
if they're doing some kind of daily functions. If they're laying in bed not doing anything at all, like a little China doll, like untouched, they take their meds, they don't bend over and tie their shoes, they slide into loafers, they do nothing that's aggravating. A test that day or range of motion measurements that day might be dramatically different than the week before if they tried to pick up their daughter or tried to unload one half bag of groceries and tied their shoes wrong or had to sit at their desk for 8 hours. If they did the exam that night, the results could be dramatically different.
100%. I've noticed too, one of the other tests, I think, not a test. I've had doctors tell me this in the past. One of the most common things you see in a medical examination. I need your shoes off, please. And and act like it's no big deal. They want to see if you're going to do the flexion and take it down to that. And then okay, you take your shoes off, but then we ask for the flexion and range of motion. You can't even go that far.
Yeah, they want to see if you're taking your shoes off, if you can reach down, untie the shoes.
Right. Yeah, that's all things that are noted. Yeah, and I will give a heads up sometimes to clients in the waiting room, like kick your or I'll offer. I'll be like, if they're struggling, be like, I'll get that for you, and then I'll write that. I'm like, I had to take their shoes off for that. Yeah, kind of take that off their plate.
Great.
So,
I've seen some people have to come in for multiple DMEs, and so what's the reason behind that?
Well, it depends on what the areas of injury are. So that's a good question. And so the defense will often try to have a couple opinions all piling on. But hypothetically, if a plaintiff has a separate and distinct shoulder joint injury that they had treatment for, injured, complaints of pain, discomfort, maybe a surgery, some firms will send them to an orthopedic doctor who focuses on upper extremity procedures. If somebody has a spine injury, some defense firms will send that person then also to a doctor who only focuses in spine surgery or spine injuries. Some firms will send off to a generalist, off to a non-surgeon to give commentary on a surgery. Surprisingly, not a lot of rhyme or reason. There's one doctor out there now who's a neurologist. Never performed a surgery his entire life. He's hired on a regular basis to give an opinion on whether or not a surgery was related or necessary. It won't shock you to hear that most of his opinions come back that it was not related or necessary or not caused by this car crash. And that doc never ever scheduled a surgery, never did one himself, but is shockingly giving a final opinion as to whether or not a surgery was required. So you might see a doctor who, if it's a knee injury, if they're smart, they'll send that person off to a knee surgeon, off to a knee ortho. If it's a spine surgery, they will get that person off to a spine surgeon. So you might see 2 defense medical examinations in the same case. If there is a significant, meaningful, emotional, and psychological component, that's a whole different schedule of doctors. Oftentimes a neuropsych will be the defense expert. If they do choose that route, you've got oftentimes 2 full days. Tim, you know this. It could be 2 full days of testing, and then an opinion after they crunch the numbers. There's extensive interviews. So it really is an interesting kind of whole can of worms if they open up that area, because those specialties are definitely unique among themselves. But if it's a back or neck injury, you get one bite at the apple. You pick one type of doctor for one type of injury. You can't pile on and hire an ortho surgeon and a neurosurgeon who both deal with spines, for example.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Great answer. We have some people in the audience. I just encourage anybody to ask us any questions if they have any. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. We'll see them and we will answer them. But Nicotra law really doesn't get into too much medical malpractice, do you?
We really don't. It's a very specialized area for people who have an extensive background in that. As you know, Tim, they're really, it's a whole different animal. Medical malpractice really requires a staff of support staff also, of paralegals who might also be nurse paralegals. We have sent before recently, medical charts to you for your opinion and review on causation. But med mal cases need that, but then also they need an MD to come in and certify that the case has merit and has value. And then there has to be an affidavit of merit signed before a med mal case is sued. So there are a lot more hoops to jump through. It's quite a specialized area. And we've been focusing for almost 30 years on very traditional personal injury cases, motorcycle crashes, car crashes, some very bad fall downs or dog bites, things like that are what we focus on every day. And if it's a really important med mal case, we have two firms that we think do great jobs at it. We'll help with the introduction. We'll help with that whole interview and try and find people the right lawyer for the right job.
Awesome. Recently, Nikki and I and the other nurses in my firm here, we've received a lot of med mal, and we're this is not related to your personal injury, but we're finding docs for the certificate of merit, and we're also finding medical experts for firms. We're expanding those avenues. So besides the personal injury, we're also doing the med mal aspect. Interesting.
That's a great service because it's something that is really needed. Because as you know, for a first look, oftentimes getting doctors involved that first minute is, number one, hard to get, and number two, quite expensive when you guys can really do a full workup, look at causation, highlight the weaknesses of the case, highlight the strengths of the case, and kind of give it on a silver platter to then maybe an MD specialty of that area who can spend maybe 3 hours in the charts and not 12 or 15 hours.
What Nikki and I will do, we'll how we'll phrase it is we'll see if it passes the smell test, and if it doesn't pass the smell test, we'll tell you why, and if it does, we'll tell you we'll get you the doc for it.
Helpful, yeah, for sure. That's a great service for sure.
So, what's the main phone number for? Is it 866 Nicotra Law?
So we have a couple numbers, and for a couple different reasons. We do handle cases all across New York State. So 866 Nicotra is our toll-free number. But because people's cell phone plans don't really require, before it was a big deal, right? You're calling a local number versus an out-of-town number or long distance. Now all the cell plans have long distance included. So we have 716-333-3000. And then we have 585-333-3000. So really, no matter where anybody is, we try to be able to be reachable from them, whether it be the toll-free or the regional numbers. And then we do a lot of motorcycle crashes. So that number is 716-97-BIKER. So it's kind of a fun one.
Oh, that is.
And we're out there doing some grassroots marketing and campaigns and helping people who are injured in motorcycle crashes, because those cases really are a different animal. The investigation is different. The benefits or lack thereof are different. As you can imagine, because you're on a motorcycle, it's very dangerous. So what's happened is the legislature, when they created the no-fault regulations providing free medical care, essentially, for anybody who was a driver or a passenger or a pedestrian in a motorcycle crash or a car crash, you get all your medical bills paid. If you're riding a motorcycle, either as the operator or a passenger, and you get hurt, you do not get no-fault benefits. So you don't get your medicals paid for without a purchase of a separate rider. You don't get your wages paid for. There's no mileage reimbursement. If you're on a motorcycle, you lose all that.
And as we're heading into motorcycle season now, I know you notice the signs every April, May. People put them up. Motorcycle season. Watch out. They'll be on people's lawns, or because people, regular drivers don't always see that motorcycle coming by them. That's good to know.
And we do the same thing. I think we printed up a couple hundred of them last year. We'll do the same thing this spring and hand them out. Put them out on street corners, but basically just to remind people, just to have a sense of mind of it. And it really does help if people are looking for motorcyclists, because the profile of a motorcycle often is only 1/3 the width of a car.
Right.
Doesn't have the same presence on the road, and it's hard to explain, but they're easily missed.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, I went to a couple IMEs in a neuropsych for a poor woman she operated her own motorcycle. It's middle of the summer. She's going down the road, and a FedEx truck just pulls right out in front of her, and she just hits it. Nothing she could do about it, and it's changed her whole life.
And the injuries, Tim, as you know, because they're the least protected, the most vulnerable. The injuries are really severe. We resolved a very meaningful case for a motorcyclist yesterday, and we got max policy limits, but he's still not right.
No.
And because there's no fault benefits, there were some medical bill issues that we helped resolve with him as well. But being there at the beginning, kind of supporting that local group is important, because there are no protections. When you go down, the injuries are really severe, and people turn left in front of you all the time. I have a couple motorcycles I've been riding since I was a little kid on a mini bike, and I can't say how many times I'm driving home from work, and literally somebody pulls right out in front of me or turns left right in front of me. I've got 5 different lights on the front of my bike. They're all lit up. I've got underlighting. Like, I don't understand how they don't see you, but I promise you, there's enough left turn cases or even rear enders. Like, it's shocking how these things happen. But I'm telling you, they don't see you. And so one of our trademarked kind of slogans, especially for that group, is see us when they don't see you. And we've trademarked that because we think it's so important that literally most of these crashes that are happening that are not the fault of the bikers are when vehicles do not see them.
And I don't know why that's so common. I mean, it's just not a select group. That's every year they'll say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like it doesn't matter how loud the bike
also,
is, how bright the bike is. It's crazy,
Exactly.
With bicycles as well, and now with the advent of e-bikes being so popular, and they're a ton of fun. I have one. I love it. But now these things go 30 miles an hour. So I bought aftermarket LED headlights, tail lights for it. It's not going to matter, because if they don't see my motorcycle, they're not going to see the e-bike. But it does help a little bit, because there's also flash mode. And so for the lights that I have, you put it in flash mode. I have a helmet with a built-in light on the back of it. That has a flash mode as well. So there are and by the way, they're coming out with, for motorcycles, they're coming out with add-on lights that are also flashers for the back of your helmets. And then they're also coming out the last couple of years with airbag clothing. So you can either have a vest or a full jacket and pants. The price point is still quite high, but literally they're momentum triggered. So if you are thrown from the bike or in an impact, as soon as the acceleration begins to hit that of a person being ejected, for example, it pops open. So it's really quick. It's quite violent, but you get this huge, almost like the water wings when you were a kid swimming.
Right.
But they have that effect though for the arms, the chest, the kidneys, the spine. And then some of them have a separate neck pillow that pops up, and then we'll protect that neck.
Interesting. Dash cams, you like them too, for cars, right? Does that help with a lot?
We love dash cams. And sometimes, people are like, oh, it didn't happen that way, or it did happen that way. Often people will apologize at the scene and say, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you. I looked down at my radio, my phone, my coffee cup spilled. Then when the police get there, they won't take fault. Or when they get home and they talk to their spouse or their insurance agent or their attorney neighbor. Then they'll call their carrier and say, that wasn't my fault. They were speeding.
Right.
Well, you turned in front of me. You apologized at the scene. You didn't see me. But people do really change their story. I hate it. I think it's part of the human condition when they're confronted with some damage or hurt or harm they caused. But you'd be really surprised at how many people change their story after being apologetic and admit at the scene. So that's why dash cams really are the way to go. There is no confusion. My recommendation for dash cams are the front and rear facing. But we've also, you don't need that, because even with the front facing camera,
Sure.
you hear what's happening inside the car. They have audio. And so you see the jolt, you see all the things shaking. If they have like a little air freshener or a hang tag for a parking lot hanging off the rear view mirror, you can hear the reaction of the person in the car, in instant pain. So a dash cam, and they're not expensive. You can actually go on websites like Temu.com has some that are quite inexpensive, that really are pretty darn similar to the ones that you'll find in the more expensive retailers selling these.
Great information. Well, we've been at this for 40 minutes, and I think this has been pretty interesting, and I think we covered a lot of great personal injury topics, and especially when it comes to IMEs and nurses and the benefits of Nicotra law, which 716-333-3000, 585-333-3000, or 866. What is
866 Nicotra. Tim, thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me. I know that people generally for this topic might not be interested unless they've had their own event. But as far as people that have not had an event or don't need me, we do a free insurance policy review for anybody. Because after the crash is not the first time you want to check your deck page. Buying the insurance policy is really expensive. Your premium, even for a minimum policy, is often $1,500, $2,000. In order to protect yourself, if you take that minimum New York State policy and you quadruple it or multiply it by 10 times the coverage, it's often only a couple $100 per year in addition to the expensive policy to walk out of there with $250,000 of insurance coverage, with $175,000 in no fault or PIP benefits that will pay your medicals, your mileage, and your wages. The basic PIP is $50,000 only, and it goes quick if you need it. But buying extra additional PIP protection is dirt cheap. A rental car, people go online and they bid out Geico versus Progressive, right? They want the cheapest policy. Well, guess what? They'll give you a printout and take off spousal coverage for $15 a year. They'll take off rental coverage for $9 a year. I'll say, look, we could be Progressive by $13, and people click it. And then they get into a crash and they don't have rental and they don't have anybody towing their car anywhere. I'm like, well, you saved $3 this year. Good job. It's not their fault if they don't know it, because what happens is they're being sold a bill of goods for the cheapest policy. The days where we had our insurance agents sell most of the policies, they could advise you and say, hey, listen, you're saving $13, but I could double your insurance, by the way, for another $30. And if you ever need it, that $13 or $15, or even getting a personal umbrella, $1 million umbrella typically is only around $125 per million. People don't understand how cheap that is, but it protects you and your family to a much greater extent for almost nothing.
Since I got into this business, I've got umbrella on everything because I just see it,
Super smart.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for having me. It was great being on here. If anybody has any questions, again, those numbers are also a text line. So we also be happy to either review your insurance policy if you send it in, or just call for a quick Zoom. We do it all the time. We help people understand what the limits are, and then what they might need is a bare minimum, and then what they might need really to protect their family and why.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to call this another fine episode, and we appreciate you taking the time with us, and thanks again, and have a great day. And I'm going to turn off the live here.
You too, Tim. You and your company have been wonderful for us, and we really appreciate this.